Welcome to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. And now your host, Tim Johnson.
We'll have a candid conversation about public education in Louisiana when former State Superintendent of Education John White joins us on this edition of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Louisiana businesses, by partnering with your local community and technical college foundation, you're guaranteed a skilled, highly competent workforce, homegrown talent, trained specifically to meet your needs, whatever those needs are. Visit this website to learn more about how to partner with your local Louisiana Community and Technical College Foundation. To better prepare for tomorrow, become a partner today.
At Optimal, we understand what's at stake during your projects. That's why we value integrity, trust, and expertise. We retain proven and experienced craftsmen, and with multiple locations, we can execute hundreds of customized project solutions across the country, so you stay ahead of schedule and under budget. At Optimal, you come first, plain and simple. We have your back, and we always deliver. Experience the Optimal difference.
Are you a licensed contractor? There's lots of good contractors in Louisiana doing work the right way, but unfortunately, too many unlicensed contractors are working outside the licensing requirements. Working as a contractor in Louisiana requires a license for the company doing the work. The Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors wants to help you get licensed to allow you to conduct work legally. It's not difficult to get the license. We can help you. Go to lacontractor.org for more information. Licensed contractors, it's the law.
For 8 seconds in the arena before an afternoon in the field. For a promise to students that honors success in the classroom. For championships earned on the bayou. For innovators committed to reclaiming our coastline. The Universities of Louisiana. For your future. For our future.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Very pleased to be joined by my good friend, former State Superintendent of Education, John White. John, welcome, buddy.
Thanks, Tim.
Glad you're here.
Good to be here.
I want to talk about a lot of things, but we mentioned former State Superintendent of Education because when this show actually airs, you will have passed March 11th and your last day. You've been in that position since 2012. Why was now, John, the right time for you to step aside?
Well, I've got a life ahead of me and probably some things outside of government. I've been in government most of my 21-year career, and I'm thinking about ways of influencing the world and impacting the world in different ways. And I felt like, we've got a new board. The governor just got reelected. We have a new legislature that just met last week for the first time. And I felt like giving them a full 4 years with a superintendent was the right thing to do. So I certainly leave with some sadness and some chagrin, but I'm also looking ahead to new things for myself, and that's why it was the right time.
Well, a wonderful family. We were talking before we started the tape today, a year and a half, a 1.5-year-old, another one on the way, wonderful family. So you've got a lot ahead of you there. I think the general feeling is you are leaving public education in a better position than you found it. In your resignation letter, you wrote something to the effect of that Louisiana is more educated today, more well-educated today than any time in its history. Give us a big picture overview of the state of public education in Louisiana.
Yeah, and that's, I said that Louisiana is a better educated state today than it has been at any point in its history, because that's what my team was asked to do. My team was asked to make this a better educated state than it was when we started, and we've done that. We are graduating more students than ever before from high school. We're sending more kids than ever before to college, more industry-based credentials by a huge factor for our high school graduates than ever have been earned before, more TOPS than ever before. We're the fastest improved state in the nation in middle school math. We've been in the top 10 in every single national test over the decade that spanned my time in office. So in that respect, Louisiana is a better educated state than it's been before. Now that said, and I know we're going to probably touch on this at some point later in our conversation, but we shouldn't be under any illusion that Louisiana is fully competitive with most states and frankly with most advanced economies around the world. We're not. I mean, we've made great strides, but we're not really where we want to be, and therefore we got to keep our foot on the gas.
We will talk more specifically about how competitive Louisiana students are against peer states and quite frankly around the world a little bit later in the show. But you mentioned some really significant gains. To what do you attribute those?
High expectations and effort day after day, month after month, year after year. And when I say that, I don't just mean Bessie, the State Board of Education, the legislature, my office. I really mean the teachers. I really do attribute it to the teachers. We've got 50,000 teachers in the state. And when they were asked to step up to change, which you remember there was some serious tumult. I mean, when I came in early 2012, there was some really hard discussions going on politically. But at the end of the day, most teachers, the overwhelming majority of teachers in this state have stepped up. They've embraced change. They're instituting the most challenging curriculum of any state in the country. They're getting prepared in the classroom in ways that is unimaginable in other states. They're having students choose career paths and university paths in a more intentional way than in any state in the country. And all that happens because people in schools make a choice to make it happen, not so much because people in Baton Rouge just make a decision.
You mention and you give, I think, appropriate credit to teachers. It's a tough job, isn't it? I mean, talk about your relationship, John, with those professional educators over your time here, and the work that you've seen them do, and just really how difficult it is to be successful in the classroom today.
It's a grueling job, and I started my career as an English teacher, and I always try to go back to the nights I spent night after night after night reading what we were going to read the next day, planning for the next day, grading papers, making calls home, dealing with a kid who maybe has been out for a couple of days. I mean, it's a grueling profession if you choose to make it that way. And I think most of our teachers do choose to put that type of effort in. There are 50,000 teachers. There's 50,000 different stories. There's teachers who do this well and that well, and some who struggle in this way and in that way. But if you do my job, or the job that I had, and you're not trying to understand the way that the changes you're making are actually impacting, for better and for worse, the people who are on the front lines, then you're not really doing the job.
You mentioned that as much as we have improved over the course of the last 8 to 10 years, there is still significant room for growth. I think the impetus behind Common Core a number of years ago was a very simple proposition. We need to make sure that our 8th graders are on par with every other 8th grader in the country, and in fact, every other 8th grader in the emerging economies around the world. We're not there yet. Talk about that competition and raising the level of expectation for our kids so that when a kid leaves the 8th grade here and his family moves to Virginia, he's not or she's not a couple of grade levels behind.
And I'd say there's two, kind of competitive questions. First is, are we sure that families in North Baton Rouge are getting the same as kids in South Baton Rouge? Are we sure that kids in the 9th Ward are getting the same thing that kids are uptown? Are we sure that we have our own house in order? And then also, are we sure that when our kids graduate from high school and college, they can compete for jobs in Germany, they can compete for jobs in Singapore and Japan? I mean, are we confident our kids can be competitive? Because the only way for Louisiana to be what we want it to be is for us to assure the civil right of every child to a good education and assure that graduates can compete. And so, I don't love standards and tests and ACTs and FAFSA forms as much as anybody else does, or any more than anybody else. But I know we need those things to verify whether we actually can compete. And you're not talking about a 10-year change. You're talking about a multi-generational change to advance our economy, to advance civil rights, and to advance our state. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's also not going to happen by shying away from being competitive.
We must measure those things that we want to improve, and I think you and your team have done a nice job. Let's take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about some of the things that have traditionally held public education in Louisiana back to the degree that it has been. We're visiting with former State Superintendent of Education John White. You're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Since 1919, we've designed and constructed hundreds of industrial plants, roads, ships, dams, and executed some of the most complex jobs in the world. In fact, our quality and dependability are legendary. Today, the legend continues as Brown & Root delivers engineering, construction, maintenance, and industrial specialty services throughout the U.S. and the world from our headquarters here in Louisiana. We are Brown & Root.
Welcome to Southwest Louisiana. 5 parishes working hand in hand to provide economic development, opportunity, and quality of life. $43 billion in projects underway, $65 billion in the pipeline, 18,000 construction workers, and 18,000 permanent jobs. It's all here. Welcome to Opportunity, the Southwest Louisiana Alliance.
Louisiana businesses, by partnering with your local community and technical college foundation, you're guaranteed a skilled, highly competent workforce, homegrown talent, trained specifically to meet your needs, whatever those needs are. Visit this website to learn more about how to partner with your local Louisiana Community and Technical College Foundation. To better prepare for tomorrow, become a partner today.
ExxonMobil Baton Rouge keeps the local economy rolling. Our new aviation project created hundreds of jobs, drove millions of dollars to local businesses, and poured thousands more into our community to improve schools. 1 in 8 jobs in our parish can be traced back to ExxonMobil. Tomorrow's Baton Rouge is built by what we do today. A little energy goes a long way. ExxonMobil Baton Rouge. Energy lives here.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Former State Superintendent of Education John White is my guest. I want to have an honest, real candid conversation about significant barriers to improve student achievement in Louisiana. I'm going to name a few things that you constantly hear, or I guess commonly hear, in terms of impediments to improving public education. I want your thoughts on the ones you believe are the most critical: poverty, funding, availability of early childhood education, white flight, the number of kids that we have in private schools in Louisiana as a percentage of our overpopulation, and what does that do to school support overall, teachers' unions, low standards, low expectations, and finally, politics. As the former State Superintendent of Education here, tell us what you think.
Well, it's undeniable that, stuff that happens at home impacts what happens in school. I mean, everybody knows that. Kids are having problems at home, whether it's nutritional problems, psychological problems, family problems. Their parents have real issues themselves. I mean, that's going to have an impact. And let's be very real. Louisiana has had, over its history, many, many struggles that have led to many, many struggling households here today. And that includes dating back to an agrarian economy rooted in slavery, segregation, Jim Crow. All those things matter. The fact that we're shifting from an agrarian economy today across our entire state toward a knowledge economy, and we're still very much in the midst of that, that has an impact. So let's not pretend that social and economic issues don't impact the classroom. But my job and a teacher's job is to educate a kid sitting there today.
Right.
And it doesn't matter.
Regardless of how he or she shows up, right?
Absolutely. So it's not worth having the debate as to whether or not economics and sociology impact
we know they
schools.
Do.
Of course they do. Yeah. The question is, what do we do as educators here today with that child? And we know that high expectations matters, a skilled teacher matters, a good curriculum matters, and you can do those things unless politics gets in the way. And so I would say that Louisiana, yes, it has structural, historical, sociological challenges. Let's meet those. But let's not forestall a high-quality education and let politics get in the way just because our kids bring those challenges. Education can be a serious lever to helping kids take the next step and disrupt that cycle of poverty if we let it be. And the only way we won't let it be, because I really do believe teachers and kids want to disrupt that cycle of poverty, is if we let politics get in the way and water down our expectations, try to muck up the system with too much this agenda and that agenda, and take our eye off the ball.
From the perspective of that answer, that focus on the classroom and doing the very best job to educate that child with all of the baggage he or she might come to the classroom with, you and your team really have had great success. We've mentioned the improvement over the years. And that focus, and you've done it, I think, in a way that demonstrates that you and your team, and therefore the state as a whole, really cares about these kids. You've proven that you can take children from difficult backgrounds. You can take children who are in poverty, in fact, whole schools of them, depending on their location, and have good outcome. Talk about the satisfaction that you must get personally with your team to see those children come from those difficult backgrounds and succeed beyond their wildest imaginations, and sometimes yours too.
Well, that's a hugely satisfying thing. I mean,
Right.
no question about it. We have schools in our state that every day are performing acts of heroism, making sure that students who are growing up in conditions that nobody should have to grow up in are seeing life outcomes and moving on a trajectory that really is in line with our society's values, our country's values, the founding principles of this nation and its economy. And that's great. Now we need to get more. We still have a serious gap between white students and black students. We have a serious gap between the wealthy and the poor, between those with disabilities and those without disabilities. And those are things that date well back into history, well before you and I were alive. But at the same time, they are the things we are living with today, and it's our job to see that every single tool that we can bring to advantage the disadvantaged, we bring to the fore.
It takes innovation, it takes compassion, it takes a lot of the things that I think mark John White's tenure in public education. If you had a magic wand, John, and you could wave it, politics and funding notwithstanding, and you could today have the authority to make any significant change in public education on your way out the door, what would you focus on?
I'd really do 3 or 4 things. First, I would have a quality early childhood option for every family. It's not a magic wand. I mean, it's not a silver bullet.
But we know the statistics and the research
it's
say
helpful. And look,
it works.
anybody who's
Right.
had young kids, I'm in the middle of this right now, as you mentioned, whether you're rich or poor, it is incredibly costly to find a good child care and hard to find a very good one for your child. So having them come in ready to kindergarten, safe, healthy, nourished, all that matters. Second, we should pay teachers more. But we should also pay them in a way that's in accordance with their performance and in the challenge that they've taken on. Some jobs are harder than others. In our profession, just like in every other one, we should pay teachers according to the challenge. Pay them more, but pay them according to the challenge. Third, a strong curriculum, preparing teachers to teach that strong curriculum so that people come into the job knowing what they're supposed to do. And I think fourth, and maybe most of all, when we graduate kids, they should graduate into a seamless path to prosperity. I'll do a lot of work in construction, craft trades, and our oil and gas industry.
That's right.
We should assure young people want to go down that path, they've got a seamless path in that direction. You've done, by the way, so much work in that, and I'm so appreciative of it. Whether they're going to LSU or Southern, they should have a cost-affordable path there. It shouldn't be when you graduate, the question is, what do I do? It should be, wow, I've got a bunch of options, and now it's time for me to take the next step. And we're not there right now. We're graduating a lot of kids who are still graduating into doubt and debt, and we can't have that.
I have argued for a number of years that education at all levels exists primarily, not exclusively, but primarily to prepare individuals to participate successfully in the economy. And I know you're focused on a laser beam on that. I want to take a break. We come back. I want to get into that. No state in America has done more to reinvent career and technical education than has Louisiana, and I want to focus there. We're visiting with former State Superintendent of Education, John White. You're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
At Optimal, we understand what's at stake during your projects. That's why we value integrity, trust, and expertise. We retain proven and experienced craftsmen, and with multiple locations, we can execute hundreds of customized project solutions across the country, so you stay ahead of schedule and under budget. At Optimal, you come first, plain and simple. We have your back, and we always deliver. Experience the Optimal difference.
For more than 20 years, the TJC Group has been helping companies assess their training needs and to develop programs that improve the effectiveness and productivity of their teams.
Training doesn't have to be expensive or complicated. Let us put our experience and expertise to work for you.
The TJC Group, facilitating solutions for business and industry.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Former State Superintendent of Education John White is our guest. We mentioned as we were going to break that no state in America, I believe, has done more to reinvent and reintroduce, quite frankly, career and technical education, what used to be called VOTEC. Every state, I think, in America has come to the realization that we've got to do more to prepare these kids to be employable, because 70% of the jobs in the U.S. economy and slightly more than 70% of the jobs, the careers that are available in Louisiana's economy, require something less than a 4-year college degree to access them. You guys have done great work there. Ken Bradford and that team, just really outstanding. You introduced Jumpstart a few years ago. You are about to introduce or have introduced some significant upgrades to Jumpstart, our CTE program. Talk about that significance, John.
Well, our job is to nourish the individual student, to nourish him or her as a citizen, and to nourish him or her as a participant in the economy, as you mentioned, all those things, the individual, the citizen, the worker. And you don't just get there through the traditional curriculum. Students need to be able to explore their interests, and work is a source of energy and interest and nourishment for young people. It can also, as you note, provide them a path to a good first job and maybe a good second job. And so we have gone from effectively having a left for dead career and technical education system to one where you can walk into schools now and see computer and STEM type coursework, welding and the craft trades, to hospitality, to healthcare, pretty much as a standard expectation in our schools. We've gone from 1% of students graduating with an industry-based credential to 25% graduating with an industry-based credential.
And I believe, as importantly, these programs are aligned to the economies in the region where the programs exist.
Yes, exactly. And
right.
I mean, it's not a relevant thing if you don't.
Right.
Now, we are proposing some upgrades, and last week Bessie heard those upgrades, and those upgrades have to do with making sure that every single course is laser focused, connected to a real job on the other end of that. None of this means anything if employers aren't saying, we would hire these young people, or we would pay for their education or support their education to get hireable in our firm. And that's what Jumpstart's all about.
And you guys have done a great job raising the level of esteem with which these programs are looked upon. Yeah. And you've done things like making CTE and industry-based certifications and credentials equivalent to advanced placement or college prep.
Yes.
And you've done that in a way that the school systems and the schools themselves are rewarded if they can produce those job-ready individuals.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you graduate with an NCCER carpentry credential, you should be rewarded no different from graduating with an advanced placement credential. In fact, it's not just schools and school systems we're rewarding. We have an annual Student of the Year that we award across the state. Well, it's always been the Student of the Year has 10 different APs and the National Merit Scholar and so on. Well, we've now factored in Skills USA competitions and the types of credentials that NCCER and others offer into that, so that those kids can be held up in that competition just as strong as a kid is loaded up on APs.
I think as much as the improved overall standards and the improved level of performance for our students, this focus on getting these kids career ready at the high school level is going to pay big dividends for Louisiana's economy going forward. I'm a lifelong Louisianian, John. Been here all my life. Maybe that's good, maybe that's bad, but I love this place. And I talk on this show every single week about its uniqueness, and more importantly than its uniqueness, its potential, right? Now, you were in New York, you've traveled all over the world, you've studied education systems all over America. Talk about Louisiana's potential in your eyes as you exit the chief state school officer position here.
Well, you're right. I mean, the two school systems I worked in before this were two of the three biggest in the country, the Chicago system and the New York system, which is where I spent most of my time. And those are places where people kind of come and go. I mean, of course, there's native New Yorkers and native Chicagoans, but people come and go. You can move there and expect to reasonably move out. This is a different place, and it struck me when I moved here 9 years ago that it was a very different kind of place. And when you really start to understand it, from my vantage point in the education system, what you understand is that it's a place that's rooted in families' love of children. There's no place that loves its kids like Louisiana. And Louisiana's kids are just as smart and they're just as capable as any child in New York or Chicago. And so in a way, the question for us in the education system is, how do we tap into the immense love that we Louisianians have for our kids, to set high expectations, to make the case that our schools need to provide every possible opportunity for every single one of those kids, and keep the momentum going. How do we leverage and build on what already exists in communities, homes, and churches in this state to create a great, great possibility for every child?
That's well said, my friend. What's next for John White and his beautiful family?
Well, I've got another kid on the way, as you noted,
Yeah.
so a little chaos is probably next in my life. But I'm going to take some time and figure it out. You know, as I said, I've been in government and education for 21 or 22 straight years. Every year of my career has been in education and in the public sector. And I'm going to look at what are other ways I can impact this mission. I'll tell you, the thing that gets me up every day, though, is the knowledge that I believe we have a lot of untapped potential out there. I believe we have a lot of untapped potential. And I'm not talking about folks who dropped out of high school. They've got potential certainly too. I'm talking about folks who did everything we asked them to do in high school. And how do we connect them to a good first job? I helped to start a nonprofit recently I'm on the board of called Propel America that is working in Baton Rouge and in Monroe and Ruston, trying to get kids good first jobs right out of high school. And in some way, the next phase of my life, whether it's in the public sector or the private sector, is going to be all about that mission.
From my perspective, I offer you congratulations and thanks from a grateful state for the passion that you have brought to this job. Next superintendent's got really big shoes to fill in my mind. We've made great strides. We still have a long way to go, but you can take away from this the fact that John White played a significant role in moving the ball forward for this entire state. My friend, thanks for all you've
Tim,
done.
thank you. Thanks for being a great friend and a great mentor and for having me on.
Best of luck, my friend, as you go forward. That's a wrap, guys. Thanks for joining us. Join us again next week at this very same time for another edition of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.